I'd like to welcome all of you to the 20th anniversary 215 Festival. My name is Joshua Demery, and I'm the director of the 215 Festival. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. I'd also like to acknowledge the intertwined legacy of colonialism and slavery that persists in our city today as we continuously work towards racial justice, equity, and liberation here in Philadelphia. Thank you. So we have a great event for you tonight, but before we begin, I would like to take a moment to highlight some of the upcoming events in the festival. Tomorrow, you can join us at 6 p.m. for Building Community and Collective Power with Ashley Coleman, founder of Philly's Own Permission to Write, who will lead a discussion with three powerhouse writers and advocates, Tiffany D. Jackson, L'Oreal Payton, and Janine A. Cook of the world famous Harriet's Bookshop. And since you began the festival with us, I hope you will end it with us as well and join us this Saturday at 9 p.m. for our traditional festival capstone, Footnotes, a literary dance party. Come enjoy tunes selected by some of Philly's best authors / DJs, including Yolanda Wisher, Paul Lisicki, Gregory Pardlow, Patrick Rizal, and Anne Ishii. And though free and open to the public, there is a suggested $10 donation, the proceeds of which will be split between the festival and Mighty Writers, a nonprofit dedicated to teaching over 3,000 children a year the joys of writing in Philadelphia, Camden, and Atlantic City. And so I hope you will join us for that. And finally, I would like to extend the 215 Festival's eternal gratitude to our sponsors, the Stables, Lanternfish Press, and the Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing program at Rutgers University Camden. I'd also like to thank a few individuals without whose kindness and generosity the festival would not be possible. Mary Herzog, Nathaniel Popkin, Joey Sweeney, Fajr Muhammad, Christina Ayler, Feliza Casano, Emma Copley-Eisenberg, Herbie Hickmott, Graham Todd, and of course the entire 215 team, Heather, Jeff, Mel, Anju, Alina, and Jared. And a very special thank you to James and Diane for helping us kick off the 20th anniversary 215 Festival. So if you would like to learn more about the festival, learn more about what we do, be able to attend events throughout the festival or throughout the year, you can learn more by going to 215festival.org. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can do so by searching at 215 Festival in all of those programs. And so I would like to thank all of you so much for attending tonight's event, because what is a festival without its audience? And so without further ado, I will allow Jared Michael Lowe, 215 Programming Coordinator, to take over. And thank you all again.
Hello, and welcome again to the 20th anniversary of the 215 Festival. Like Josh had said, my name is Jared Michael Lowe, and I am one of the programming coordinators for this year's festival. If you like today's event, you can keep up with festival events all year long by signing up for our newsletter at 215festival.org. This event has live transcription, closed captioning available. Click the CC button at the bottom of your screen to turn on or off the closed captioning. Please also note that this event is being recorded. It is my privilege and honor to introduce you to someone very special to me and to many others, Miss Diane McKinney-Whetstone. Diane McKinney-Whetstone is the author of 6 novels. The latest, Lazaretto, was published April 12, 2016 as her first novel. The critically acclaimed Tumbling celebrated 20 years. She mines the city of Philadelphia for her material. The blocks and neighborhoods themselves become characters as she tells stories of everyday people existing in families and communities, characters faltering, yielding to their desires, falling, fighting, climbing, reaching for their better selves. Twice awarded the American Library Association Black Caucus Literary Award for Fiction, she is also a recipient of a Pennsylvania Council on the Arts grant. She is a past lecturer in the writing program at the University of Pennsylvania and she lives with her husband, Greg, in Philadelphia. I've known Miss Diane for many years and am elated to see her in conversation tonight with James Rahn, founder of the Rittenhouse Writers Group. And with that, I will hand it off to Miss Diane to do a reading of her novel, Tumbling.
Thanks so much, Jared and Josh. Thank you both for inviting me to participate. Totally elated that I'll be in conversation with James tonight. And I'll start by reading the first chapter of Tumbling. As Jared pointed out, Tumbling is 25 years ago. So that's, the book is getting old. I'm not. The black pre-dawn air was filled with movement. Its thin coolness rushed through the streets of South Philly, encircling the tight, sturdy row houses. In 1940, the blocks were clean and close. The people who lived here scrubbed their steps every morning until the sand and the concrete sparkled like diamond pins. Then some went to work mopping floors and cooking meals for rich folks, or cleaning fish at the dock, or stitching fine leather shoes or pinch pleated draperies at the factories on the north side. Some answered phones or crumpled paper for the government. Some tended house and nursed babies. A few were really nurses. One or two taught school, unless it was the weekend. On the weekend, the blocks came to life. They'd cram into Club Royale, where red-headed olives danced in gold-colored liquid, and the music flowed like bubbly, and brown faces laughed for real. Not the manner tee-hees of the workday, but booming laughs. And Sunday, they shouted in church and felt the sweet release, where grand hats rocked and high heels stomped, or went clickety-clack, depending on how the spirit hit. Right now they slept, especially if they'd been at Club Royale earlier. They were in a heavy sleep as the moving air wrapped around their chimneys and stroked their curtain windows and slid down their banisters. It breezed past the church where the bricks were gray and jutted into the dark air, and even shone from the dew that was just beginning to settle. It shimmied over Pop's, the corner store famous for its glass jars filled with sweet pickles pig feet, then dipped past the funeral home owned by the Saunderses, where the Model T hearse was parked out front. It blew over the playground where a makeshift swing hanging with tufted braided clothesline swayed to the rhythm of the dancing air, and then turned on through a short block where Car Playing Rose lived. The light from her basement meant that kings and queens and aces were slapping her fold-up table adorned with piles of red and green chips for quarters and dollars and IOUs. And then the night air moved all through Lombard Street and bounced up and down the long block where Noon and Herbie lived. Right now, it caressed a brown cardboard box being slipped onto Noon and Herbie's middle step. Noon was fast asleep this Saturday morning, still hours before her faithful church bells would get her an early riser's wake-up call, so she didn't hear quick swishes of leather against concrete rushing straight to her house. Nor did she stir when the rustling sound got louder as sweaty palms shifted the box gently along the steps of the wooden tip. But if Noon or anyone else on the whole of Lombard Street had been only half awake, she surely would have heard the singular whisper tinged with a sadness that was dark as the night. The air heard it and swallowed it up and whipped around the corner to push Herbie on home. Herbie was wide awake, walking through the streets as the air nudged him on, heading in after a night of clapping to the beat, then hanging later at Royale because he'd heard Ethel might be coming back, then stepping outside of Royale and running right into Bo, the barber who cut hair at the end of Herbie's block, and having to suffer through a lecture about the wages of sin and ignorance. Herbie appreciated the way the moving air was at his back. He needed a push to get home. The red and white candy cane lamp in front of Bo's barbershop made Herbie mad again as he thought about Bo's finger wagging in his face and his voice all in his ear saying, "Boy, you got a good wife. Stop trying to live the fast life, chasing women and hanging in those clubs." He got some nerve, Herbie thought. He ought to be glad my sweet, pretty mama taught me to respect my elders. I would have yanked his finger and told him to mind his own business. Herbie kicked at the air as he walked past Bo's. He didn't consider himself a woman chaser anyhow. There was his wife, Noon, and there was Ethel. At least there had been Ethel. He hadn't seen her in several months, but now the thought of her roundness filled his head, the way she moved like fire and made the air crackle when she laughed. The thought warmed him as he pushed up Lombard Street toward home. The air was moving faster now, impatiently, rushing ahead of Herbie and then doubling back to egg him on. He pulled his jacket closer and picked up his pace. His house was in the middle of a long block. For the past year, he and his wife Noon lived here with people mostly like him who used to live in the South too, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi. They brought their dialects, their gospel music and blues, their love for Jesus, children, and candy yams. A few had been here all along, so they said, like Noon's pastor, Reverend Shell. My daddy's daddy worked for Harriet Tubman, Reverend Shell was often heard to proclaim. The stories of the perilous journeys on the railroad made for rich metaphor many a Sunday about making it to the promised land, except that Herbie got it secondhanded from Noon. He rarely went to church, didn't particularly care for Reverend Shell's dramatics, and had a few railroad stories of his own, as he was a redcap, a porter at 30th Street train station. The air was really dancing now and whistling and made Herbie step even faster. Noon would be asleep, he was sure of that. Just as well, he thought, with her problem at all when it came time for them to mix pleasures, just as well. When he thought about Noon, his guilt vibrated in his chest like a tuning fork sitting where his lungs should be. Good church-going woman she was, didn't go to card parties or speakeasies, content to take care of him and her church business and roast a turkey for somebody's wedding or fried chicken for the gathering after somebody's funeral or sew organza dresses for somebody's girls for Easter, nice things. He was almost sorry he was warmed by thoughts of Ethel. But then he pictured Ethel's lips, the thickness and redness, and her drooping eyes that always seemed to be moaning, baby, baby. And he thought about Noon and her problem and Bo's finger wagging in his face, and all he could do was say, damn, out loud to only the moving air. The box sat patiently on the steps as Herbie approached his house. He might have tripped over it, except that pink yarn fringes hung over the edges. They rippled in the breeze and startled the night as they moved. They startled Herbie too. What the hell? He murmured as he stopped sharply and nudged the box with his foot. He pulled back the pink covering. He peered into the box. He stood straight up. He pulled at the end of his long, thin nose and rubbed his hands hard across his head. How many beers had he had at Royale? Only two. Not even enough to make him miss a step. Certainly not enough to make the night do a strangeness on his mind. He reached in his jacket pocket and snatched out a tin filled with red top stick matches. He struck a match and cupped his hands to protect the flame from the air that was circling him in wispy drafts. He leaned into the box, guided by the fire. A baby. Damn sure was. Somebody had left a baby right here on the steps. He sat down on the steps next to the box. He lifted out a dark-haired infant swaddled in a loosely knitted bright pink blanket. His hands felt clumsy and large as he held the baby like a chicken he had just pulled from a crate of ice on 9th Street. The baby jerked and then cried a loud, agitated cry. Shit, Herbie said. You're going to go and do all that crying? Someone will think I'm out here trying to hurt you. I'm only trying to figure this out. He brought the baby to his chest, awkwardly at first, and then he worked up a smooth, gentle rocking motion. The baby hushed. He rested the infant along the length of his thighs. He lit another match and held it high like a torch so he could see the baby's face. He saw the eyes, dark as coals that shocked him first, then softened him to putty. What you looking at, huh? He whispered into the eyes. You can't see me no how. Don't y'all stay blind till you're much older than this? He felt silly. He had never talked to an infant before. He thought that he should run in the house and wake Noon. She would know what to do. Surely they'd have to turn the baby over to authorities, but in the meantime, Noon would know what to do about feeding it and changing it. He caught himself calling the baby it, and then wondered if it was really a girl child. You gotta be a girl, right? I mean, they got you all in pink. I'm just gonna have to trust that you a girl. The eyes pierced through the pre-dawn air that had gotten quiet around them now and held him as he talked. He knew where he had seen these eyes, not just their blackness or their roundness, but deep inside, beyond the physical, these eyes had a knowingness about them, a familiarity. These were his mother's eyes. He'd seen eyes like these from time to time after his mother's death, a stray dog that would hang around the Mississippi country house and shock him with his mother's stare, a bird that will allow him to get closer than any normal bird would, and then look straight through to his soul the way his mother used to do. Even the pantry mouse that he couldn't kill because it gripped him with his mother's eyes. His mother came back to him again and again in the eyes, but never before in a human's eyes. He wondered then where the baby had come from. dropped out of the sky to stare at him and reinforce Bo's warnings about trying to live the fast life? He dismissed that. His superstitions had their limit. He let the flame go out and drew the child closer into his chest and cradled her head in one hand and, with a deftness that surprised him, rummaged through the box with the other. Shameful. Abandon you out here under the cover of night like this. No note saying what your name is or nothing. Diapers in here. Bottle in here too. No reason though. They packed everything in here except the reason why. He stood, still holding the baby's head close to his chest. She smelled of cocoa butter and talc. He rubbed his chin against her hair, which was thick and soft. I'll take you in the noon and let her change you and do all that tending to business. The baby nestled her head in the crook of his neck. He stopped short. He had never had such a sensation as this, as if a blanket of warmth had just peeled away from the chill of the night and covered them both. The air let out a deep, contented sigh as Herbie stepped through his front door, holding the baby close as he went. Noon, he yelled once inside the door. Noon, you gotta come here and see this. Noon. He trod tenuously across the buffed up shine of the hardwood floor. He held the baby's head to his chest as he walked. He stepped onto the thick circle of a throw rug in the center of the room and yanked the cord that turned on the living room chandelier. He eased the baby's head back in his palm so he could see her in the swaying light of the chandelier. Herbie, that you? What you got that bright light on in the middle of the night for? Coming in here talking loud this time of night. What's all the commotion? Noon's voice was generous, like her round face, her bow-shaped hips, and her healthy legs. It was what had attracted Herbie to her in the first place, the hips and the legs. He could see the print of the hips even now as she rushed down the stairs in a thick quilted robe. Lord have mercy. Where in Jesus did you get that baby? Where'd it come from, Herbie? On the steps. I was on my way in from Royale and this box was on the steps. On what steps? Royale's, ours? She pulled back Herbie's arm and gently took the baby from him. And where's the box? Maybe there's a note or something in there. Still on the steps, on our steps. I wouldn't go looking through boxes left on anybody else's steps. He went back out the front door to bring the box in. The space between his chin and his shoulders still held the warmth of the baby's body right where she had nestled her head. It is a girl, right? He asked as he walked back into the living room and put the box at Noon's feet. She was now on the couch, smiling exaggerated smiles and otherwise animating her face as she cooed and clucked and amused the contents of the pink covering. Oh yeah, I done checked her out. She's a girl for real, a newborn baby girl. Can't be more than a week by the looks of the cord, and she's gonna need changing. She talked more to the baby than to Herbie. Herbie hoovered over Noon as she undid the loosely knitted blanket and inspected the baby's limbs and fingers and toes. Diapers in the box, he said it with authority, and be careful with her head. Excuse me, Mr. Herbie. Noon turned and looked at him, her small, slanted eyes filled with exclamation. I've been taking care of infants since I was 10. I do know how to hold the baby. I'm just surprised you were even able to get her up the steps and in the house without snapping her spine. Well, I did. I even stopped her from crying when we were out front. It just came natural. She was good and content with me holding her too, till you came and snatched her right out of my hands. I declare for God, you seem to have gotten mighty attached to this baby. I thought a baby was the farthest thing from your mind. No, it's just that I can hardly get close enough to you to put you in a family way. He saw Noon flinch, even from where he was standing, looking down on her head that she turned from him. He could see her scalp tighten through the brown twisted papers that she used to curl her hair. He stopped and breathed in hard and said, I'm sorry, Noon, I shouldn't have said that. Noon's face was round and soft brown, and the print of her cheekbones was usually lost in the roundness, except that they were showing now as she ground her teeth and swallowed hard, trying to swallow the hurt that always surfaced as a ball in her throat whenever it reminded her of her bedroom problem. It was all Noon could do to just pull her defenses up like a girdle to keep him from seeing the hurt. Right now, the baby helped. Mercy, mercy, she said, ignoring Herbie. You got the cutest baby I ever did see. Look at those eyes. The eyes are something, aren't they? Herbie said excitedly as he pushed into the space between Noon and the arm and the couch. What those eyes look like to you? Like black diamonds, that's what they look like. Noon took her voice down to a whisper. The baby's eyes held Noon too. Wish those eyes could tell me who left you. Why they leave you on our steps on a chilly night too, even if they did have you good and bundled. Do they know me, whoever left you? Or did they just leave you arbitrarily? The room was completely quiet except for Noon's whispers and the baby's light breathing. It sounded like sighs. The chandelier swayed to the hushed rumble of Noon's voice. Herbie pressed himself into the couch and stared in the baby's eyes. He got that same gush of warmth that he had on the steps when she nestled her head along his shoulder. He fingered the infant's thumb and touched her hair lightly. Wonder who her parents are. She felt light, looked to be half white. She don't have her true color yet. Now Noon spoke with authority. Her true color is in the tips of her ears. She pulled the blanket from around the baby's ear. See, the tips of her ears just a little darker than the rest of her. That's the color she gonna be, good and yellow. I done told you about calling people yellow woman. Herbie said it playfully, mockingly, trying to soften Noon and make up for his sarcasm a minute ago. All right, golden then. She gonna be a golden color, like a piece of cornbread. Noon got quiet then as she looked from the newborn to Herbie, the dark hair, the cold black eyes, the light skin. Herbie and the baby had these in common in a striking way. Noon couldn't think it. Suppose this was Herbie's baby. Suppose this whole business of a box on the steps was a made-up tale. Suppose he had just crept from some hellhole with some harlot and had just finished telling her that his wife will take the baby. She can't have any of her own, but she can't mix pleasures with a man. She cringed at the thought, except that she knew Herbie better than that terrible liar he was. Lean face showed off every muscle twitch when he was nervous. Thick, dark brows couldn't do anything but recess when he was ashamed. Even his lips, which were short and full, tightened involuntarily when he was guilty. She watched him as he sat transfixed by the baby's stare. His wide shoulders were rounded, relaxed. He found the box on the steps. She believed that for sure. When she spoke again, she said, "Guess we're gonna have to turn her over come daybreak." "Guess we will," he agreed. "Sure can't keep her. That could get us locked up." His words felt like lead coming out. He was hoping Noon would say, "We're not hardly turning this child over." No, no, no.
Thank you, Miss Diane, for that lovely, lovely reading of Tumbling. And now I introduce you to tonight's discussant, James Rahn. James Rahn is the founder of the Rittenhouse Writers Group, a series of quarterly fiction writing workshops. He started RWG in 1988 and is one of the longest running independent fiction workshops in America. Many members have published short stories and novels. James has published 2 books, Blood Night and Rittenhouse Writers: Reflections on a Fiction Workshop, along with many stories and articles. He also taught for 15 years at the University of Pennsylvania. James, I will hand it off to you.
You're on mute. There you
Diane,
go.
okay.
Yes, I can
I
hear you.
just, to be back into the novel Tumbling after 25 years is so wonderful. And the one thing I so appreciate about that first chapter and the whole book is the tenderness that comes through and the sense of community, the incredible vividness of the scene, of the details, of the observations between the characters, and also the tension that we immediately get between Herbie and Noon, and also the affection. And it feels like a long marriage, but there's still there, there's still so much there between them. And so I want to ask the first question, which is a general question. What was the genesis of, let's just say, your pursuit of writing fiction and then turning it into this wonderful, turning it into Tumbling?
Yeah. Well, I had always wanted to write fiction, and I never was. And I was approaching a big birthday and just making the decision about, at the end of my life, what will I regret having never tried? And certainly fiction writing was very high up on the list. And so yeah, I started Tumbling like not knowing anything about writing fiction. I mean, I'd written all my life, written for work, but not a story, certainly not an extended story of a novel. And I just started. I didn't know where it would be set. I didn't know where it was headed. I didn't know who the characters were. I didn't know what I was doing. I just started writing. And I realized early on that I was writing about my mother's neighborhood, and the images falling onto the page were really about, how she used to talk about where she lived, that she affectionately called downtown. And they would get up every morning and scrub the steps, and it was really an active community. Not only were they cleaning, it was also an active community. Their church was central. The very vibrant music scene in Philadelphia at that time, and she would talk about how safe her neighborhood was. I mean, just idyllic, seemed idyllic. And so when I started writing,
this was in the 40s and the 50s, right?
yes,
In
yes.
West Philly.
In South Philly,
In South Philly.
she called it downtown. It was, yes, what we know as South Philly, and then South Philly. Now it's part of Center City. The way things have morphed and been taken over. She loved her neighborhood and would talk about how safe it was and how clean it was, and just, if something happened in West Philly, she would say such a thing would have never happened in downtown. And we were like, well, why'd you leave downtown then? Well, they were going to run a road through our neighborhood. And so I just, I had this notion of the road and this community, and I just exploited it in a fictional way. But I didn't know when I started out, I had no idea where the book was going. I just started writing.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about the how the characters unfolded for you. And I know that you've mentioned before that one of the characters, Ethel, one of the key characters in the novel, started out as a sentence. And then she just developed into a fully rounded character. And I imagine the other characters, which you didn't exactly know where they were going, but they sort of took off and maybe got away from you at times, and it was kind of confusing where they were going to end up. Because I don't know, you don't do a whole lot of outlining you didn't do a whole lot of outlining for Tumbling. You just sort of just let it go in a kind of associative way.
I did. I did. I didn't outline it all, and or have even. I mean, I didn't know enough about the book to outline. The outline. This has to follow A, B has to follow. I didn't know enough about it, and so the characters evolved. Really, I knew enough about the story that someone leaves, left a baby, and then 5 years later it happens again. Yeah. Someone leaves a child on Noonan Herbie's front steps, and I just needed, Ethel to get this other child onto their steps. So she was just going to be a sentence.
Yeah.
This jazz singer Ethel takes, can no longer take care of her niece. She leaves her with Noonan Herbie. But she just kept wanting to get back into the story and let me in. So I couldn't, I'm writing an entirely different scene, and I would get this sense of Ethel, let me in. And I had to give way. A similar thing happened with when I was first working on the book, Terry McMillan, popular writer, was having a lot of success with her novels, but she was also being criticized for her treatment of Black men. Yeah. And when I was writing, I said, these, Black men in my book, they're going to be good. They're going to be solid. Yeah. They're not going to do anything wrong. They're not going to run, none of that. Except that when I was working on the book, there was this sense with Ethel and Herbie that
Herbie had to be flawed.
If you put us on the same page, we'll get together. And so it was you can't, this will mess up the book. This is not how this book is going. Yeah. Ultimately, I had to yield to the characters. I really did. And the book was strengthened as a result. I mean, no other way that the story could have played out if Herbie was not flawed. All of the characters, in fact, had to be flawed. And so I just had to have compassion for them, even at their weakest points, and just allow them to be who you know, who they like the book knew what it was about. I needed to discover it, in other words.
Well, yeah, you needed to discover how to make them like fully formed.
Exactly,
Give them that,
exactly.
to give them that dimensionality.
Exactly, exactly. And that was, you know, that was challenging also, you know, writing about this Black community. And there was the tendency to, well, just assume like this is them taking in a child. This is something that Black people did, you
Yeah.
know, in the South. I've heard stories of someone leaving a child with someone, and
The whole gift child, the whole gift.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, like that. That was a fairly common thing. And I was actually in Rittenhouse Writers Group, and people were asking, why does she take the child? And I said, well, the thing is, like, this is something that, you know, Black people did.
Yeah.
And they kept asking the question, I'm not understanding why they take the child so readily. I said, well, again, this is what Black people did. And it like bugged me. The question bugged me.
And
It bugged me.
the person bugged you.
The person too. Yes. And it
And what was that person's name?
remained nameless.
Yeah.
But it bugged me enough that it stayed with me, and I ultimately explored that. Why does she take the baby? And so it certainly, this is something that this Black couple would have done realistically, but authentically, why does she take the baby? And I realized that I was missing like this deeper layer to Noon
Right.
that would have been lost had I relied just on her race.
Right.
And so it was that part of the writing when I discovered that, yeah, these are Black people, of course, and they act in certain ways, of course, but
How did it?
I can't rest on that, because then they'll be reduced to types. They'll be stereotypes. They won't be fully formed characters. Back to your point about the fully formed. So
You had to
mhm.
explore like the deeper psychological motivation.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely.
So
Mhm.
what, talk a little bit about the movement from your discovery of the story and the characters
Mhm.
in the first pass through the first draft of the novel, and then the movement to the second draft, and what was that development like? I mean, the improvement, the revision, the sharpening of the seams, the
Mhm.
structuring of the book.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
complicated was that based on the
Mhm.
fact that the first draft hadn't been outlined?
Yeah, it was number one, it's before I even started revising, it's like this acceptance that, you know, just psychologically that it's not perfect. Like, because
Right.
you know, you spend a year and 500 pages, and it's like, this is done. This is good, right? Right? Isn't it good? You didn't read it closely enough, you don't see how good it is. I mean, there is that like wish
Yeah.
for it to be that way. And of course, that's not the reality. So number one is accepting that it needs work. It needs a lot of work. And then to like get back into the story, like just immerse myself back into the story. Actually, once I did that, it became exciting, because I could see the flaws, but then I could also see the possibilities. You know, I went through, it was, you know, that there's a scene where a big reveal that I was not aware of in writing the first draft.
Yeah.
And then as I started revising and was rewriting a scene, and I realized something about this character, like where this character came from. And it was like, oh my gosh, this like huge revelation. It was very exciting. And you know, really started like revising and writing. It's like I had this moment of just absolute clarity where I
Yeah.
could see where the story needed to go. But that was only after like going through the whole process of accepting that it needed a lot of work. And then getting down to the process of revising.
Yeah.
Yeah. revising is tough. It's tough. It's tough. It's
How
tough.
many drafts did Tumbling go through?
Tumbling went through maybe 4 kind of made, there was the initial like just outpouring of everything on the page that was, it's really, more of a mush than a novel, but I had a lot of stuff down. And then the second draft where I was able to whittle it and really discover the story that was trying to be told. The third draft refined it even further. And then I think by the fourth draft, it was ready to go out.
And so has it gotten any easier with the next 5 novels?
No. It hasn't. It's just, I still go. I think that the thing that's better now is that I have history on my side.
Right.
And so when I'm stuck, I can recall each book where I have been stuck, where I have had the sense that I have written myself into, this like jail, prison that I can never get out of.
Yeah.
And I've been at that place where I don't know where this story is going. I've been at that place. Is this a story? Will this ultimately be a book?
Yeah.
Why did I ever try to be a writer in the first place? I mean, with every novel, I've gone through those various stages. And so I can, where I am now, novel I'm working on now, kind of going through it, I can look back to the other novels and remember that it was resolved and what did I do to resolve. And the only thing to do is to keep
push on.
That's it. That's it.
So do you dream about the characters? Does your unconscious say when you're dreaming, or does that ever resolve any of the problems in the novel that you wake up with kind of this like small epiphanic moment and you go, oh yeah, this is it, and your unconscious is giving you like a bonus there? Or does that ever happen?
Sometimes that will happen after a lot of time put in, like never at the beginning when I'm trying to figure things out. It's after I've gone like so many hours. I mean, a lot of weeks and months and deleting and restarting, where I'll have this clarity. And it's always like really early in the morning. I mean, that's just, it's my time. And so yes, it's really early when I have the most clarity, and that's when things come to me, and I can figure things out.
And I know how important it is for you to get the first chapter right. And so that is kind of general for all the novels, or like if you can get the first chapter, and in the first chapter it sort of encapsulates the kind of dynamics and the tension and the main characters and what the themes are of the novel. All that sort of is you try to crystallize in the first chapter, and that can be daunting, I imagine.
It is extremely daunting. It is. I torment myself with the first chapter because it's, like, it's the first impression, and it just needs to be everything that it needs to be. And so I will work on a first chapter for months, and I'll go on and write other portions of the book, and then discover something and go back and rewrite the first chapter. And I have just deleted many beginnings that just they didn't work. I mean, with Tumbling, I had, I've been like maybe the second draft in when I wrote in an entirely different scene. The Black Pre-Dawn air was filled with movement. It's like, oh my God, that's the opening line. So it was then, having to rewrite based on that. So the beginnings are tough. They are tough. I mean, I've been working on the novel I'm working on now.
The endings are tough too.
They are.
And the middle part is tough too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
But at the beginning, you got to get beginning you try to get right. If there's any
Mhm.
flagging in the novel, it would be in the middle, but the ending's got to be right too. So
The ending has got to be right. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes.
But I really appreciate it. I mean, you sound so much like the writer with all our struggles and your struggles, and every project has its own demands.
Absolutely. 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 Yes, indeed. And nothing that there's no substitute
For
for
working.
working in it. There's just yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's, I mean, one of the most important, the willfulness. I mean, to get the book done, even though you live with the self-doubt and the confusion about where the book is headed. And
Sure, sure,
it's so
sure.
important to work hard and build up that consistency, try to get to the work, every day for a certain amount of time, and then
Absolutely.
and sort of will yourself through the tribulations that occur in
Sure,
so
sure.
what now the I, I know that you don't I don't know how much research do you do for the novel, the historical aspect, and then how much does your imagination take you close to what the factual content should be, uh, or the particular details should be for the story? How much does your imagination get you there, and how much research do you need to do?
The research really is my least favorite part
Yeah,
because then I have to grapple with the facts, and the facts actually get in the way for
yeah,
me
yeah.
of like the truth of the story.
Right.
And they're the facts, and then it's the truth, and they like are at odds with each other when I'm writing. And I actually like to imagine it first and write without dealing with the facts and just using my imagination. And then of course I have to get things accurate, particularly the historical context. But I'm always amazed at how close the imagination comes. It's
Yeah.
like, that's pretty close. That is, it's amazing. But yeah, I grapple with that, the imagined portion, because I don't want to, the novel I'm working on now is more contemporary. And so um, uh, it's easy to look around a room or pick up a newspaper, and like everything is like right here, and it feels too easy. I mean, I'd much rather invoke the imagination, and because then I get not only what I think it was like, but like everything, like just the atmosphere, the smells, the feel, the sounds and sights of things
Yeah,
are all coming together in an imaginative way, that I think makes for much more powerful storytelling.
yeah. I feel that way too.
Mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
struggle with, like, I don't really want to get to the facts. I just want to just like make stuff up,
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
then it's like later on I have to inject the facts into, and people say, did this really happen? And I go, maybe.
Yeah, it could have, right?
Because we're seeking the emotional and psychological truth of the
That's
story
right.
and the characters. And so
Absolutely.
what has moved you from the more, because the most of the novels are historical, but now you're moving into more contemporaneous narrative. So what what is that? Why have you moved in that direction? I think.
I good question. I don't know. I'm writing about this novel that's set now,
Yeah.
and people living on a retirement village, active living retirement
Is it
village. And
pre-COVID? Is it
it
pre-COVID?
is
Yeah.
pre-COVID, yes.
Yeah.
And but they do have pasts, and so there are a lot of flashbacks to their past. And so it still will have its historical narrative, will be very much a part of the novel.
Right. So
Mhm.
it's a movement between present and past, and
Absolutely, yes,
it
yes.
doesn't exactly unfold linearly. I mean, it's broken up like that.
It is totally, absolutely, absolutely. Just hard. I mean, it's hard. It's yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
they don't get easier. No.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Um,
So, all right, is Jared, is he? Yes.
Hello, I am back.
All
Okay,
right.
so we do have some questions in the chat.
mhm.
Um, and I'm actually going to start with,
Let me just interrupt for a second. Thanks, Diane. That was great.
James, thank you so much.
It's just
Absolutely.
great being in the room with you, and I miss you. So I want to just say that.
Same here,
Okay.
same here, same here.
All right. Okay.
Mhm.
Jared, I'm sorry I interrupted.
no worries. So the first question we got from Darcy, can't wait to read the rest of this book. How much, if any, biographical or semi-biographical elements do you add to your writing?
Well, and Tumbling is, they're all fiction, of course, but I mean, they also come out of me. So parts of me certainly fall onto the page. In the case of Tumbling, the neighborhood is really evoked from, I mean, it's based on my mother's stories of her neighborhood, of what she affectionately called downtown. So the sense of place in that novel, and I think in all of the novels, are fairly reality based. The characters may start off as people I know or have known, but once they start talking to me, and they're on the page and doing their dances, they become unrecognizable. So I don't think anyone can point to a character in my book and say, that's so and so or so and so, because they just one of my sisters though insists that the middle child in Tempest Rising is her. This is, this has this like really sunny personality, and she insists that that's based on her, not so.
Awesome. We have another question, this one from Joshua Demery, the 215 Festival director. As Philadelphia has changed over the past 25 years, has it changed the kind of stories you, Miss Diane, have wanted to tell about the city?
I think that I still want to tell stories of community, and so as much as the city has changed, I think the idea of community has remained consistent, and community is just a big aspect in all of the novels. And so even though how we communicate is different, we don't necessarily, we're more likely to text than to pick up a call, or Facebook or FaceTime, as opposed to like sitting down on the steps. But there is still, the notion of community and connectedness that's very important, even as that's evolved, and even as, the city has changed. I mean, I still like, like just a sense of compassion, that's part of community. I still like to draw that out, even though it feels diminishing in some aspects, in a way that can be painful, when I think about, like how it was, how it is today. But yeah, just that sense of community that's just real important to me, and consistent throughout my work.
We have another question from Lyria Howland. Thank you for illuminating Black culture. It is important for all of us to experience culture through fiction. I know more about my own Black culture as a result. We must tell our own stories. What was your experience finding a publisher who would appreciate this aspect of your work?
First, hello, Lyria, dear friend, went to pen together. She's now in Texas, and tell Jeff hi. Yes, the what was the experience? The publishers, they like really. I mean, I was surprised at how the story seemed to resonate with them, and pretty much my then editor was just, even told the copy editor to, she wanted to look over what the copy editor had done because she didn't want the voice disrupted. And so I think it was, at least Tumbling was well received. There wasn't anything, no changes asked of me that I thought were a violation of just me as, like this Black writer, this Black woman writer writing about this Black community. There was nothing where I felt that I was being asked to do something that would in any way like violate that, because that's very important to me, that I be able to present the characters as I see them, and that they be allowed to move in the world the way the author, thinks that they should, and really the way the characters reveal themselves to me. So, I've never felt that impinged upon at all. Do they, I mean, just the marketing of the book, and that's a whole different discussion. Publishing still has very, 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 very long road to walk in terms of really, I think, giving Black authors and Black books their due. So that's another discussion, but absolutely.
We have a bit of a twofold question from the same person, H. Patricia Blackshire. And she has multiple questions. How long did it take you to write Tumbling? And what did your relatives think of the book? I must admit, I was hooked from the very first paragraph. And she also has, do you write by hand? And are you an animal lover? You named a few in the first chapter.
Tumbling took about 2 years of really writing as much as I could, because I was also otherwise employed, day job. Tumbling took about maybe 1 year to get to a decent draft, maybe 2 drafts in, and then another year to refine it. And I was also active in the writing group, so that helped a lot with the just thinking through things and working out problems, and the questions that helped me like really explore what it was I was trying to do. Tumbling took 2 years. I mean, I don't have anything against animals, if that's what. I don't have any pets. I mean, we grew up with a German Shepherd. I generally like animals that are nice, like people who have dogs. my daughter's mother has a wonderful dog that I love. My daughter-in-law's mother. I said my daughter's mother.
You had a cat named Swirly, didn't you?
I did. We did. That was my daughter.
Swirly.
Swirly.
In the basement.
Yes, we loved Swirly. Yes, absolutely. And then there were two other parts to the question. My family, like, they love all of my work, and they give feedback, and yeah, they are my thank God, my biggest fans.
And there was another question, do you write by hand?
Oh, actually, that's a good question, because when I'm like really trying to figure things out, I will open a journal and write, for sure. So, but I mean, most of the writing, actually the work of the writing happens on a keyboard. But when I'm just figure, I'll like make circles and just, play around on the page. It feels like doodling, but I'm actually trying to work things out. Sometimes if I'm like just stuck, I'll just write in longhand, for 10 minutes on anything just to get the words flowing and just see what's just below the surface. So, and that is always good with a pen and a pen and paper. And I'm, a little fussy about my pens. So yeah.
We have another question from another question from Marilyn Coates Bradley. Any offers to make this or any of your work a film?
Hi, Marilyn. Also, so Penelope, good friend. They are. Tumbling was actually optioned by Whoopi Goldberg. And but she, when someone options a book, they will have it for a certain period of time, and then they can either exercise the option, which means a movie will get made, or not. And so Tumbling was optioned by Whoopi Goldberg, but the option expired. Leaving Cecil Street was optioned by Ipatha Murkison, and that option expired. Tempest Rising has been optioned by Felicia Rashad, and she's kept the option up. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that's a whole. There are a lot of streaming services now, so that can make a difference. But just getting, just getting novels into that format, good Black novels is it's a tough high mountain to climb, I'd say.
Wow, those were some heavy hitters. I did not know that, but amazing. And hopefully we get to see those stories come to life in a theatrical format. There is a question from Gwen McKinney. Tell us if there could be a Tumbling revisited 25 years later, and what would that story look like? Or is it even possible?
Yeah. Hi, Gwen. I have been asked like many times to please do a Tumbling part 2. And I think, and I've always been reluctant to do that. I'm also old enough to never say never. I will say that I've thought about it, and I'm still at the place where I think for the time being, I've gone as far as I can with those characters. Although I've thought about it would be a little exciting to explore, what Fanny and Liz, how they may have ended up, or Noon and Ethel, like that they become friends, So yeah, it could be, but I feel like sequels are often so disappointing, and to reimagine those characters in 25 years from now, I don't know that I've never tried it. I don't know that I don't know that I could do it. I'll just say that.
Awesome. We have another question. We have another question from an anonymous attendee. How has your writing process and approach to the work changed since publishing your first book?
Well, as James and I were talking, it has not gotten easier for sure. And in some ways it's gotten more, the burden of expectation, I think in some ways can make it more difficult. With Tumbling, I was entirely, I didn't, I had no agent, no editor, no publisher, no contract, no deadline. And so I was, there was a fair amount of freedom to do what I wanted to do. When I start a book now, a book, if I'm working on a book in earnest that, I want to get published, my agent goes through it, and then she presents it to a publisher. before a contract, before there's actually a contract. And so it's already gone through some stages, and at that point is maybe somewhat locked into what the story will be, even though I still have quite a bit of latitude from the proposal to the finished product. So there's the burden of expectation is certainly there, except that the part of the process that has remained consistent is, when I'm like start fresh, like really early in the morning, and and I'm sitting down, and things like feel like they're coming together, and I feel like I'm in the scene, and the characters are right there, and I can kind of like, the atmosphere. I can like I'm situated in the scene that I'm writing about, and I can like see the little droplets of sweat on the character, and I can like smell, maybe the lavender that they put on their wrist or whatever. Just the details are so precise, and I'm in the scene. It just doesn't get any better than that. And that part has not changed. I mean, through all of the my moaning and complaining about, I got a deadline, but that has remained, that's remained consistent, that part of the process.
Nice.
We have a question from Jane Gallen. How do you sustain the energy of mood through the work of the story of a novel, particularly in light of doubt?
How do I sustain
the energy of mood through the work of the story of a novel, particularly in light of doubt?
Well, it's like just I turn the doubt into an advantage. Like, okay, I'm not sure I can do this. Well, let's find out. I mean, it's that kind of I have to accept that right now I'm doubting, right now my faith is wobbly in my ability to do that. Okay, but I'm still going to do it. So it's I think it takes just a fair amount of perseverance and just yes, it does. It does. It does. It does. Just like, all right, I'm here. I'm at the computer. I have this idea. I don't know if I can pull it off, but it's one of those things that, it'll work if it works. And I won't know if it works unless I see what can happen. And I'll sometimes start with, okay, let's see what can happen here. Just not knowing. So I think that's it. And also being committed to whatever it is that I'm working on, like just that sense of commitment will also drive me.
So I have a question for both Miss Diane and James. Tell us a little about RWG, Rittenhouse Writers Group, and how community helps great writing come to life.
It's hard for me to answer that question, but I mean, maybe Diane could, but I mean, let me just say, for myself, I try to put together the best group I can, a bunch of serious people who are, like Diane used the word, committed to their writing and are trying to get their stories better. And I want the group always to be supportive, but also to provide sincere, hopefully effective criticism for whoever is presenting their submissions. But Diane, anything, I mean, it's like.
Yeah, well, I think the community was vital, particularly early on, because let's face it, the work is solitary. It's like, it's you and your pen and pad or computer and whatever is going on in your head. So, there's like the sense of aloneness. There really is. It's necessary to write, but then there's also this need for collaboration. I mean, because ultimately it's like you're not keeping a journal. Ultimately, you do want to be read. And so so the collaboration helps with how people respond to the work, uh, even early on, when the work is fragile and, the writer is fragile. Like the response though, can be powerfully motivating. When I started Tumbling, it's like I was like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going down to write, and it felt like I had like real world responsibilities. This felt like the most frivolous thing to be doing. And then I would go to RWG and turn in a story, and the response was like, wow, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. And so I felt empowered in that it was validating that this is something that maybe can amount to something, but okay, I'm not just like being frivolous, like tiptoeing down, not to wake anybody up, and just this is not like a little hobby, like this is something important. And the more I worked on it, just evoking, this Black community just became important, and just the way the group embraced the notion of the novel, and also embraced my aspirations for the novel, and understood what it was I was trying to do, and then helped me get there, like taking the work very seriously.
The work was very good. Let me just say that the work was quite impressive early on. So that was a joy for all of us.
Thank you, James. It was just, and then also reading other people's work, because there is like this pact, like people take your work seriously, you take theirs seriously. I mean, it's like it's a serious pursuit. It's that the RWG, and so then reading of like seeing what other writers were struggling with, and kind of how could I help them, then also I could turn it back to myself, and it helped me too. So it had the coming back aspect of it.
You would see the strengths and weaknesses in other people's submissions, and then it would help you to identify those same strengths and weaknesses in your own work.
Absolutely. And to critique somebody else's work that was really good, but still critique it, then I could turn it back on myself when people were in fact critiquing my work, that it doesn't mean it needs work, of course, and that the comments helped me in fact to strengthen the work. It was never criticism just for the sake of criticism.
Right.
It was criticism for the sake of of helping the work. It
never felt mean-spirited.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which I think made all the difference, because and when it's a draft, the draft is still trying to find its way. So yeah.
Just want to say that we are about almost 15 minutes away towards the end of the program, close of the program. But I wanted to actually read some of the awesome comments that we had in the chat showing you praise, Miss Diane. Taking a little break, but please continue to submit questions. Some of the comments, that soothes my whole soul. To hear a great say revising is rough. I feel that. That was in regards to you revising your novel. The first chapter is awesome, so detailed, but the flow is amazing. We had one from Christina Bradley. Yes, it was great. I love all your novels. I jumped for joy when I heard you say you are working on a novel. I can't wait. You are just great. It is unbelievable to me how these stories pour out of you. They get you hooked. I am always saddened when they end because I always want more. I'm gonna break there for comments, but go back into the questions that we received in the Q&A. We have one from John Renee. What is your process in determining a title for a novel?
That's a good one, John. I'm tough with, I mean, titles are tough for me. And in fact, Tumbling, I was going to call it The Walls Came Tumbling Down. And, you know, that's in use in many various formats. And my husband, Greg, actually suggested Tumbling. And I thought, Tumbling. And I thought, wow, that's really good. And but you know, he didn't read fiction until Tumbling. He, you know, reads nonfiction. And so I thought, he doesn't even read fiction. He shouldn't name my first book. But it was such, it fit. It captured everything. The second book, Tempest Rising, I had trouble coming up with that. And the first title, the editor did not like, and I said, well, that's the title. And she said, well, it's not only that she didn't like it. She said the marketing team didn't like it, the sales force didn't like it, and you know, the book had to satisfy them because they got to sell it. So I went through someone suggested I go through a hymnal, because you know, there's like nice phrases, and that's where Tempest Rising came from. But titles are tough for me, and I'll often change them as I go through drafts. You know, as the book goes through iterations, the titles will often change. The title of the one I'm working on now is The Gin. And so we'll see if that survives, you know, the editorial process and the sales force likes it, but it's short for sexagenarian. So we'll see.
Was that the original title of the book?
No, it was originally the 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you moved it to the 70s.
What's that? Yes.
Yeah.
It was originally the 60. It was originally the 60. And yeah, but it's now the Gin.
We have a question from Linda Wright Moore. Do you ever struggle with an inner critic that sits on your shoulder and tells you that what you're writing isn't good?
Oh, all the time, you know, and I have learned to tell the inner critic to ST, and you can finish the rest, like, just get off my shoulder, leave me alone. I mean, you just have to like talk back to it. I've gotten to that point where you just got to talk back to it. It's like, no, one thing that helps is, you know, to just write and say, okay, I'm going to write whatever I want. I'm not going to worry about punctuation, grammar, whether it makes sense, whether it's heavy or light. I'm just going to write. And so that way, if the inner critic says this is stupid, it's okay. It can be stupid. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense right now. This is a draft. But yeah, all the time. And it's just like, you know, you got to be bold. Like, shut up. Like, no, I'm not hearing this now. I got work to do. Just get away and get to what it is that you are committed to do. It really, I think that's where that's the revolutionary, bold part of writing, is just silencing the critic.
So amazing. I think we all have our, you know, inner saboteur that comes out, but it's refreshing to hear that. We have a question from Dr. Loretta Caldwell Thompson. Is it important that your white audience understand Black cultures?
No. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm writing about these Black communities, and so And that's what I'm writing about. And so, you know, there can be the tendency to like over explain, well, people may not get this. But you know what, if I'm like really particularizing the characters and particularizing the scene and all of that, and the story itself, then no, I really, I need to satisfy myself first. And of course, I mean, I'm not going to write anything that's esoteric, because ultimately I'm writing about people and, and their relationships and their conflicts and their inner conflicts. And that's everybody. But then I'm specific about, like, really about the people and the characters that I'm drawing. As an example I gave earlier about why did they take the baby. It's like to rely on just, this is something Black people would do, reduces the characters to stereotypes. And so if I'm like working real hard to be particular, who said achieve the particular and then you'll achieve the universal. There's like that paradox. If I'm being real specific about drawing the character, and I'm satisfied with it, like that is the most important thing for me. I mean, there have been things where that the editor has flagged, and I said, no, it's got to, it could be the way the character talked. I remember a character someone was going to the door and someone in the room said, get her back. And it's like, the copy editor was like, what does this mean? And I said, trust me, he would say, get her back. Just, can we like leave it? Because, you have to answer to when they flag something, if it's not part of the style manual that they're using. And it's, so no, I mean, that's not, I think I'm writing stories, and it's nice if I have white readers, of course. But that's not the goal. In other words, the goal is really, to satisfy myself that that I'm evoking this community and these characters and these people. Yeah. But hi, Loretta, thank you for the question.
We have time for a few more questions, so we're going to take the questions that are already in the chat, in the Q&A forum. So the next question is from Rochelle Lennon. How do you find your sweet spot to write continuously?
When it's good, I write continuously. It's number one, it's having, like, recognizing my time, and my time is early in the morning. And so like showing up, if I sleep till 7:30 and go to my desk, it's like, my muse is like, look, I was here at 5, you weren't. So you're on your own. So I know that. So I know when my time is, and that, so I get up early and I'm at my desk early. That's certainly part of it. But also just being in the part of the material that's just like really engaging me, like that. I can work like, later into the afternoon or into the evening if I'm like really in a scene. That can certainly, that also helps me to find a sweet spot. But it's really like just being there at the time when I know I need to be there.
Thank you. We have another question from Dr. Loretta Caldwell Thompson. It is said that God is talking to you when ideas come to you early in the morning. So do you believe it's your inner spirit that helps you with your writing?
Oh gosh, I do. I mean, writing really is, an act of faith. Like this notion that you can sit down and create these worlds, like with your imagination initially, that it is an act of faith. Like, the old people used to say, step out on faith, and that's kind of how I write, since I don't know often where I'm going. And so there have been times when I've felt like, not often, I mean, I wish it was every time I sat down, I, could write a book every 6 months, but there have been times when I have felt this, like overtaken by the material. And those are always also the most, for me, the most powerful parts of the story. So I do believe that. I believe that, it's an act of faith. And even when my faith is wobbly, it's like, I still show up.
Mhm.
We have a question from Gail Ramsey. 5 years later, I still remember the passage. The scene of the B12 deficiency was it, and the eating of the wall. Curious about the inspiration and the organic joy or spirit of the writing. Memorable.
Ah, um,
Hmm.
yeah. Hi, Gail. The wall scene was just, I mean, that just grew like throughout the book until, the entire wall was gone. And I think it was just like such a perfect metaphor for everything else that was going on in the story. And that it was this exterior manifestation of this character's like inner turmoil, that she was actually, eating the wall until it was the whole wall. And then also kind of, destroying this house that was, trying to be overtaken in this redevelopment project, so that the wall eating just became a metaphor. And as I wrote those scenes, they just got, for me, each scene I wrote, they just grew. And I felt it like in a bit of a visceral way. So yes. Mhm.
We have a comment and a question from Sherilyn Kimball. Hi, Diane. Congratulations on Tumbling 25 years later. Knowing you since high school, your work is an honor to read. Are there any pre-Tumbling short stories that you might revisit for a novel now?
Hi, Sherilyn. No, I wrote one short story, and this is when I was, I think I had just gotten a Tumbling contract, but I wasn't talking about it yet because I hadn't signed. I'm a little superstitious, and I didn't want to talk about till the contract was signed. But I was in, like still in RWG, and I turned in this story, Moon Penitent.
Moon Penitent.
Yes, yes, yes. And that it took like a long time to write that. And I just have the greatest admiration for short story writers, because number one, you need to like know what it is you're doing, and you need to accomplish it, with not a lot of pages. And so you need to get to the point. And I'm just amazed at short story writers. It was difficult. Like, just, give me 2 years and let me write 200 pages. It's, there's like a lot of room, a lot of wiggle room there.
A lot of room to be baggy.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, 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 yes.
So we have time for 2 more questions. And then I'm gonna just read some of the love notes in the chat. So the one question from anonymous attendee: do you have a book or author who stands out as being particularly inspiring to your life and or writing?
Well, I love what Toni Morrison does with the language. I think maybe Sula and Beloved for me. She just, even when she was alive, she existed on another plane than, we mere mortal writers. It's just like what I would read her. I mean, as much for the story as for, wow, it's possible to do this with the language. So I'd have to say Beloved and Sula. Also, Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain does it for me as well. I mean, just the nonlinear structure of the story uh, just pulls it off in an amazing way. So, mhm.
And we have one final question from Maida Odom. If your work were to be developed into a film or stage play, what role would you want to play in the writing? Is that something you've considered or would consider to get your wonderful novels produced?
Hi, Maida. Yeah, I'm very ambivalent about that. You know, Hemingway said that if you get a movie deal, this is when everything happened in California, movie wise, go to the border, throw the book over, let them throw over the check and go back home. Like that should be the involvement. I mean, I would have to, you know, like I wrote the book and the movie is a different thing, so that I'm ambivalent about my involvement. I may want you know, the representation, the dramatic representation to be like too close to hang too closely to the book, the narrative, as opposed to the way it would have to be to succeed in another format, uh, as a play or you know, television, movie, whatever. So I'm really ambivalent about the level of involvement. You know, I've been asked like to write a screenplay or what I want to write. I mean, I've never written a screenplay, and novels are hard enough. So yeah. So I'm ambivalent about. I think it would be an exciting process to walk through, but I'm ambivalent. I understand also that a lot of times they don't want the author. I think for those very reasons involved, and you know, the contract would really spec out exactly how much the involvement the author would have.
James, do you have any additional questions to ask Miss Diane?
I have no questions, but I just want to say that it just, again, let me be iterative here and say what a pleasure it is to be discussing Diane's book and her work and just listening to her. And I love her imagination and I love how hard she works and I love her writing. So, and I, you know, she's just fabulous person. So that's all I want to say. That's all I have to say. I have no questions.
Mm. Thank you, James. Thank you. I would thank James and RWG just for the impact they had. You know, working on Tumbling. I mean, it's like the book, like, I mean, the group was like the midwife just helping this book be born. It was so I think it absolutely made all of the difference. Really starting by just validating that what I was working on was worth my time. So
No,
thank you.
thank you, Diane. Thank you.
I just want to read a bit of notes in the chat for praise from Miss Diane. From Maida Odom, Miss McKinney-Whetstone, you are amazing. But until this interview, I had no idea how hard you struggle with the work. It makes me admire you all the more. Thank you for sharing. We have so many. Okay, from Vernell McKinney, you are awesome. I agree. I would love to see your work on stage and film. From Linda Galashaw, because of you, I too became a novel reader. Thank you. And from H. Patricia Blackshire, thank you to the guest speaker and the panel for tonight's author talk. It was very special. And finally, from David Abrams, I love the way you answer questions in so much detail. You are such an amazing speaker. And you got some additional comments coming in from Christina Bradley. Netflix needs to do a series on all the books. And from Elaine McKinney, love you, sis. And on that note, James, do you have anything you would like to add before the close of the program?
I just want to thank you and the 215, and I think you did a great job. I mean, you all do a great job. I appreciate it, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Mm.
And it's just, again, it's a pleasure listening to Diane talk about writing. I mean, I learn a lot just I revisit a lot just listening to Diane speak. So she knows what she's doing.
Mm. Right.
Yeah.
Well, special.
Her honesty. I mean, where do you get this kind of honesty? It's impressive. It's just like the heart of a writer that you're listening to. I mean, really the true heart of a writer.
Mm.
Filled with love.
Mm.
You don't usually get that from many authors.
Thank you, James.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh-huh.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yes,
Well-
thank you, Jared, and thank you
Gosh.
to the 15. This is
215.
it's been incredible. I'm looking forward to the rest of the week.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic lineup. So Jared, kudos to you for all of your effort helping to bring this to stage. Thank you so much, and really privileged and honored that you included me, particularly to open up the festival. Thank you for that. Mhm.
Well,
And
we had
James,
to. We had
Right.
to. Tumbling is such an important book for so many, including me. And thank you, Miss Diane, for your willingness to participate and for your sage words tonight. Thank you, James, for your sage words, your questions. I just have some closing notes before we all dip out. One, thank you so much for attending tonight's event. And a very special thank you again to our participants. If you like today's event, you can keep up with festival events all year long by signing up for our newsletter at 215festival.org.